So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Jay Feitlinger, who is with Stringcan Interactive and has been contracted almost probably 9-10 months now to take us on our platform journey.
Literally the whole entire day here is about you all. I had the pleasure of meeting many of you about a year ago here in New York at the last member seminar, and you shared with me and our team a lot of concerns and a lot of requests you had for the platform. And I'm really happy to report today, I think you're going to see a lot of that being addressed. My plans is first to walk you all through a couple of digital marketing trends. A few of those we have briefly chatted about over the past few months, but I want to let you know how it impacts you on the WTC side and how you can leverage this to help monetize and grow your business. After I am done talking about 4 digital marketing trends, I'm then going to have Robin and Jenny from my team. Raise your hands. There they are. And so Robin and Jenny are going to come up and they're going to talk through branding and design. We're going to be revealing to you all the work that we've completed over the past 9 months. I'm very proud of the work that we've done, and I hope you are as well when you see it. Then we'll have a nice little break. And then Matt and Davika are going to get up and they're going to reveal to you the platform. I want to let you know that we have the morning set up more about strategy, walking you all through what our research has found, our recommendations, and how all you can leverage that to monetize the business. And then we have an Ask Headquarters Q&A session. Our team is available here if there are questions for that. But I wanted you to know, though, this whole entire afternoon is going to be very interactive. We intentionally broke up you all into 3 different groups. And so on your tables there, you'll see a one-pager. It's a little hard to read. I apologize for the font size. But when you look at that, each time slot is when you find your name, that's the room you're going to be in. And what's going to happen is in my room, myself and Alex, my team, who's a digital strategist, back with me in Scottsdale, Arizona, we're going to both be taking you guys through a journey about how to align yourself with your audience, how to leverage your website to make improvements to it off the platform, and how to leverage search marketing and social media to help you get found and to grow your business. It'll be a very interactive session. We actually have one licensee, one member at each of the sessions that we're going to be working with, so you can see how in context this all applies to your business. In Matt and Daviki's section, they're actually going to go through a much more interactive session of the actual platform. So for the morning part, we're going to reveal it to you, show you elements of it, and then you're actually going to see it in works this afternoon. We're going to be building profiles. And then in Robin and Jenny's session, they're going to be doing an interactive session for you around branding and design. So I think you're going to find it all very valuable. I'm going to go through a lot of various different details here. I hope you don't get glazed over on all the various different content I'm going to share with you around digital marketing trends. I would encourage you, if there are certain areas that I maybe sped through a little too quickly and you wanted to talk about it more in detail, definitely save those questions for the afternoon. We have a full hour scheduled for each of those sessions. We have about 40 minutes or so of content, so we definitely have time for answering any of your detailed questions about search marketing and social media, or anything you want to talk about when it comes to digital. So with that, let me get started. Now before I jump into the digital trends, last night at the awesome open house, I loved seeing the new office, it was beautiful. I had numerous members come up to me and be like, what is all this hashtag Twitter stuff? And I thought, let me just explain that, because on the bottom right of all of our slides, there is a little hashtag. It's basically a little pound sign. It says WTCA 2013. And so if anyone here is using Twitter, you're probably familiar with that. But for those that are not comfortable or using Twitter, it's very similar to text messaging on your phone. Now, Twitter is a huge platform, getting about 400 million tweets or posts every single day. It's a very noisy platform, and that's the main benefit of that hashtag. So if you're going to be using Twitter, we would encourage you for the rest of the member seminar to be leveraging that hashtag. So you see on the top there, when I checked in, I saw the lovely ladies at the registration desk. I took a little picture of them. I posted out to all of my followers a picture, and I included that hashtag. And so there's kind of 2 benefits to that really fast. The first is when it comes to a conference especially, if I click on that hashtag, only those results about that conference would show up. So I mentioned before, 400 million tweets are happening every single day. That is a lot of noise when it comes to Twitter. So you can kind of focus on the area that you're most interested in. The second part is, again, trying to find people that you want to engage with. Again, you don't want to be connected with all the tens of millions of people on Twitter. You want to find like-minded people that share content that you would find interesting. And that's really the benefit of the hashtag. So I just wanted to make sure I explained that. So with that, there are 4 trends that I want to talk with you all today. And again, these are all the 4 that are most applicable to you all. As you probably watch in the media, there are thousands of new announcements every single day. Our team went through all of those and pulled out the 4 that makes most sense to your business. So I'm going to walk you through these 4. And the first one definitely is much longer. So I want to warn you of that ahead of time. The other 3 are pretty concise, right to the point. The first one is getting found is getting harder. This is all about helping you and your operations and your team being found on search engine marketing and social media. The second trend is all about avoiding shiny objects. So again, with the digital landscape, every minute there's a new thing out there being produced. You know, which ones make sense for your business, and I'll talk through that. The third area is visual growth. So again, you're starting to probably see a lot of these various platforms leveraging visuals to try to tell the story. I'll address that. And the last one is about losing control. And this is the one that our clients least like hearing about, but I want to address it. I think it's really important to understand that today. As we talk about that more this afternoon in our interactive session, it'll make a lot more sense. So with that, when it comes to getting found is getting a lot harder. We get calls from our clients regardless of their size or industry, and often the story goes like this. Hello, Stringcan. Our website was found for these various different keywords on Google last week. We're seeing a huge decrease in traffic to our websites. We're not finding ourselves anymore online. What is going on? Please fix it. I'm sure I'm seeing a lot of nodding of heads. You probably all have experienced that as well. And that's what this whole trend is all about. To give you a couple of stats really fast here, this is why this is a problem. Again, in a New York minute, I'm here. I grew up back east here, so for me that's a very fast minute. But basically, in a single minute, there's so much going on in the digital landscape. So for example, a couple quick stats to share with you all. If you look at YouTube, a very popular, one of the biggest video websites, 100 hours every minute are uploaded. On Facebook, with their 1.2 billion users, there are 38,000 posts every minute. On Instagram, 28,000 photos are uploaded. And then last but not least, the biggest search engine, Google, there are 2.6 million searches happening on Google every single minute. And the reason why this is all making it harder for us on the business side to get found is all of that content being produced by all of us is just creating more data. And it becomes a huge problem for the various different platforms because they have to figure out how do they present to you what's relevant, what you would find interesting. If they didn't do that, you probably wouldn't use their platform. So I want to give you an example around Google. So when it comes to Google, they are the leading search engine. They have about 70% of the market share. They themselves have an algorithm or a formula. And when it comes to Google, they're trying to find the best way to present to you what you're looking for. So for example, to put this into perspective, if I'm searching on the word Apple on Google, Google knows me. They'll probably present me things like the iPhone, iMac, Apple-related products. Now, if I was a farmer and I searched on Apple, Google has to realize I'm looking probably more for things about apple trees and apple production and those kind of things. It's not a very simple thing. It's a keyword, and Google's a machine. So they have to figure out semantics of what you're trying to look for. And all that data has to be processed to figure that out to get you found. The challenge, though, is there are a lot of companies out there, excluding us, that when they try to do is try to trick the system. And that's been a very, very big thing over the past years. Google literally is changing their rules almost every day. They actually just announced last week on their 15th year birthday, which is pretty amazing. They're announcing a whole new huge formula called Hummingbird, which you're probably going to start hearing about in the news. I definitely recommend you read through that and understand it. But here's a great case study I want to share with you all, and this was from 2 years ago, and this is still happening to various companies today. So Penney, for the holiday season, wanted to start showing up and get found for more phrases to help increase their revenue stream. They hired a search engine marketing firm that they asked to help them get found for various different phrases. That firm understood Google's formula, and they did all of these unethical practices that actually did work short term. So Penney website was showing up for all sorts of phrases besides the ones they already were showing up for that they earned over the many, many years of business. What ended up happening was Google has a very sophisticated system. They realized that not only did they actually remove the new rankings that the agency got for Penney, they also started removing the ones they've earned for many years. And so the point of my story here is if any of you are working with a local marketing firm and you're thinking about addressing this concern, this afternoon I want to talk about this more in detail, because it's all about the content. Google is so heavily focused now on the user, you can no longer game the system and try to trick them. You've got to focus on your audience. And that's what we'll talk about more this afternoon. And even Facebook has the exact same problem. So I will self-admit that I am a complete aggressive, active Facebook user. So I'm not a typical person. Probably no surprise, but I get paid for that, which is great for me. But when it comes to Facebook, the average person that's on Facebook has about 120 to 150 Facebook friends and family, and they follow a few brands. That's a couple hundred posts going on for every single person every single day. I myself have thousands of posts possibly showing up. So again, just like Google, if I go to Facebook and I log on to their news feed, if I'm not presented content from my friends or family or brands that I follow that are relevant or interesting to me, I'm going to probably stop using Facebook, or at least use it less often. And so 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to be invited to Facebook's developer conference, even though I'm not a developer. And I actually met with the product managers who created the formula for the Facebook newsfeed, and they were very, very proud of it and drew out for me, right in front of me, the actual formula. So I wanted to share that with you all today because this is how Facebook decides whose content to show to who. And it's really, really important. So the first one right there is called affinity. And the concept behind that is Facebook can see how close I am to my friend or my family member or a brand that I'm following. And they can see how often I'm visiting their Facebook page, how often I'm reading one of their posts, how I'm engaging with it. The more engagement I have with that person creating the content, the more likely I'm going to see them in my news feed. The second one is called weight. So when it comes to Facebook, for those that use it, you could read a post, and Facebook can tell when you're reading a post. If you're liking the post, if you're commenting on it, if you're sharing it. So to Facebook, if I'm reading it, I'm interested. But if I share it, that means I'm very interested, and I want to share that with my network that I think you would find value in. And so when they see more people doing sharing versus just reading, that has a heavier weight to it. And the third area is time decay. So again, when it comes to social media especially, as well as even Google and the various search engines, they want to present to us content in the most timely manner. So when that comes into your business, if there's an amazing event happening locally or something that's affecting import-export trade or international trade, the sooner you create content around that'd be meaningful for your audience, Google and Facebook and the various platforms will incentivize you and present those to people they believe they would find relevant. And that's really what Facebook's all about. So I keep on talking about this. You're going to hear this often mentioned today. And you probably have heard of the phrase content is king mentioned many times. With Google's recent announcement last week with their new algorithm, again called Hummingbird, I recommend you all read about that. It talks all about this. And so now content is no longer just king, it's the queen in the entire castle. So everything that we all do moving forward has to be thought about that content. How do we tell the story to our members? Do they understand the value that we provide to them? And so when you're creating the content, there's really some simple rules that I want to share with you. So first, when you're thinking about the platform and or your website or your blogs or newsletters or even using Twitter, you want to be timely, you want to be relevant. If you do those two things, you will then have your content being shared much more often. But when you're thinking about the content, though, again, I mentioned this before, you want to think about your audience. So if you have business members, if you have tenants, they could be partners, prospective employees. Whoever you're trying to target, you have to make sure that content is related to them. So the best way to do about that is think about what are their points of pain. Are there serious business problems that you can help solve? And when you're creating your content, you don't want to have this huge 15-paragraph statement. You want to get right to the point as fast as possible, especially because nowadays there is so much noise in the space. So for you to get found, you want to get right to the point and address that problem. Now, there's a saying, fish where the fish are at. If you're a fisherman, you probably would understand this. But the concept behind that is not everyone is on every single platform. So search engines, Google, Yahoo, Bing, social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, those kind of things. So our advice would be is just like we did with you all about a year ago, we interviewed, as Eric pointed out before, almost 100 WTCs. And we learned a lot about what your needs were. What I'm going to share with you in a second here is what we also did was we interviewed and surveyed almost 700 business members, your audience. And we asked them many questions. For the purpose of time, I'm only going to share with you search and social from that survey study. But again, what our recommendation would be is go where your audience is at. And so if you look at search engines, I'm sure many of you probably won't be overly surprised by seeing this. As I mentioned before, Google right now has about 70% market share. When we surveyed your audience, these were CEOs around the entire world, not just the US. It was half in the US and half not in the US. And what we found, actually, it wasn't 70% of the market share, it was 84.4%. So your audience is definitely aggressively leveraging Google. And so what I strongly recommend is you or someone on your team should invest some time to monitor this space closely. Google engineers are very proud about the changes they make with their platform. They are constantly on their blog talking about challenges they have and how they're going to solve them. If you read through it, they don't talk about them in extreme technical sense. Anyone can understand it. And when you read about it, it'll help enforce why it's worth investing your time on writing content. The second one is social media. I've heard this last member seminar. I heard this numerous times in Mumbai, as well as last night at the open house. Jay, there are so many social networks. I don't have time to do all of this stuff. Which one should I invest our time and focus on? So I wanted to share that with you all today. Again, what we did was we asked all of your audience members, walk us through the social media sites, tell us which ones you're most active on. And from there, what we found is Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter were the top 3 across the board, across the world. And so what our team did was, again, when we shared some of that with you all last night, some of the concern was, okay, that sounds good, but what do I do with that now? I'm not on Facebook personally, or I'm not on Twitter, or I don't use LinkedIn very often. So what our team did for you all is on your thumb drives that you received when you registered, is a how-to guide customized for each of you on how exactly to use Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. It's literally step-by-step guide. So I'd recommend when you have some time, go through that. On the thumb drive also is a 4th file. Now I'm going to get through this trend here in a second. I mentioned visual growth. We are seeing a huge growth happening when it comes to visual social platforms like Pinterest and Instagram. In going back and doing further research with you all and your members and tenants, what we have found is Pinterest was much more likely being used than Instagram. So on your thumb drive, there's a 4th guide now for Pinterest on how to use that as well. So we're hoping that will offer you some support. If you haven't used these platforms before, you literally can read through them, and our team is available to answer any questions that you have. So to wrap up this lengthy first trend, what our advice will be is, and this is what we did with you all, as well as with all of our clients. Start with these 5 W's. When you go back to your office and you share these presentations, think through, first of all, what goals do you expect to achieve from leveraging all these various different platforms you're trying to get connected with or found on. Secondly, who is it for? When you're creating your content, and again, we're going to chat about this a lot more this afternoon about content ideation and content scheduling. Is the content meant for a business member? Is it meant for a partner? Is it meant for a prospective employee? You want to tailor your content moving forward to exactly who you're trying to engage with. The third area is where it's going to be located. If you put content on Twitter, you have a 140 character limit. So you have some limitations there. Versus your blog, you can write 3 to 5 paragraphs or as long as you want. So you want to be appropriate with your content and where you're planning on posting it. And then what do you want them to do? Calls to action. This is really, really important. You want to think about that. Is the goal here to sign up for a newsletter? Is it to visit your website? Is it to subscribe as a like on your Facebook page? You want to think through that. And then last but not least, why are we doing this? And that's probably the most important area. Before you jump into any kind of platforms, you want to kind of think about that. Why are we doing this? Does it make sense for our business? So with that, I want to walk now through with you the second trend. And again, the next 3 trends are much quicker. The second one here is addicted to shiny objects. I myself am definitely at fault for this, so I don't practice what I preach here sometimes. But again, that's my job, so I'm allowed to do that. But the whole premise behind this is that with all of this stuff going on in this space, every day there's a new company out there and a new thing being produced. It's very easy to think, oh, here's this new thing I read about in media. Maybe I should consider trying out in my team. You forward that application to someone on your group and you say, go and launch it. And they're investing all this time trying to figure it out. That's what this trend is all about. So to put it into perspective, there are 100 movies released worldwide. There are 250 books released worldwide. And there are 15,000 apps released worldwide. So again, obviously very few of these app developers are probably making a ton of money. But the point is, they see a problem. They're trying to make a solution. The media talks about this great new fancy app built by this amazing silicon engineer. And everyone starts downloading it and trying it out. And it just creates more noise. But again, the point here is we all need to be a little careful. You all, when I spoke with you all last year, again in India, last night, you are very busy. Many of you do not have tons of staff sitting around able to play with these various things. We have some serious business problems that we are here to solve. And that's my whole intention here, is we've got to focus. And that's what our team wants to do to help you. Is what we're doing right now is we're laying out the groundwork for this year, launching with the platform. Eric did a fantastic job at talking through our next 2-year strategy. We have an amazing game plan in place, but now we need your support. We need everyone in the network to buy into this and be part of this process, and we'll basically go to the next level with that. So I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this. Is one of the leaders that I'm pretty fond of, Jeffrey Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. He also recently acquired the Washington Post. Definitely has some funds to do that. I saw him make a presentation, and he addressed the whole shiny object syndrome. It's definitely a huge problem in the digital marketing landscape. I couldn't say it better myself, but one of his statements that I love talked all about companies' values. And so when I've spoken to you all, like last night, for example, I had a couple meetings with a few WTCs. You do some pretty amazing things, and you solve some serious business problems. And so the whole point there is I'd recommend we focus on that, rather than us taking some new shiny app that we find online and we start sharing it around our network. Our advice would be is we focus on how we solve problems, and then we use these various different tools to complement how we're going to increase engagement. And that was really the whole point of that. So to wrap up this trend, and you're going to hear this, I apologize, throughout the entire day. We're always going to recommend everything that you do, focus on your audience. And your audience being your members, if you have them, your tenants, your partners, your prospective employees, your team. Think about that. And then look into it and research it. Are they currently leveraging these various technologies? And if they're not using them today, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try them, but would they use them in the future? What our team does is we actually ask your audience. So if you were like, hey, we have this great app, we want to roll it out, what we would do is go to your audience, show it to them, and get their feedback. And that's what we did actually with the platform, is over the past few months, we had about 30, Matt? About 30 of you all were very involved in our beta process to get engaged and give us feedback. We learned a lot from that process, and we made significant changes to it. The third area I want to really point out here is definitely have a goal. So if you're going to launch a new technology for your website or with your team, you want to think about what is the plan, what is the goal, and then who's going to manage that. So a great example that happened with me last week, we met with a very large healthcare company, and we had a meeting with our executive staff. And they said, hey, Stringcan, we want your help with rolling out a strategy on how to leverage Facebook. We get that question often. Now, again, we are huge Facebook fans, so I'm like, yay. However, we still were honest to our process, and we asked them why. We talked through that. And then we asked them the simple question, who on your team is going to manage Facebook for you? And everyone looked at this one lady, and she was like, I guess me. And so then I asked her the question, how much time do you have each week to invest? And she said 1 hour. Literally. And then everyone's like, OK, let's do it. And I'm like, let's stop. Because all I'm going to do is cause you frustration. We're going to create you this amazing plan about how to leverage Facebook, and you can't execute it. And so you got to think about that. Realistically, when you're focusing on growing your business and helping out your members, you got to think about who in your team is going to support this, and you have the bandwidth to handle it. OK, my third trend, these next two go quickly, is images. I spoke about that, but images definitely speak for themselves. And so if you look at GE's website, very popular, large company, here's one of the pages on their site. It looks fine. It's very easy to use, but it's just text. However, if you go to GE's Pinterest page or their Instagram account, you see this. And I don't know about you all, but when I see that, I get excited. They have some pretty impressive products out there. It tells an amazing story. And so our whole point here is that how can we all leverage visuals to tell a better story? And when you see the platform this afternoon, you're going to see we took that very seriously. Many of you have the beautiful buildings that we want to showcase. And you also have amazing team members. Let's bring all that to the front and show it off. To put into perspective, again, I mentioned Pinterest. This is the reason why we also chose Pinterest for your how-to guide. Facebook is the one that gets the most media press out there, at 1.2 billion users and growing. In Facebook's second year of growth, they had under 2%, where Pinterest had over 16%. So in the time frame that Pinterest grew to 17 million users, it took Facebook more than twice as long to do that. And it's the whole point I'm saying here is that people are loving this because there is so much content and noise out there. If they can see an image and it tells a story, it's a much easier way to process that content. So our point here would be is when you're thinking about the platform, you're going to see that a lot mentioned today, as well as if you have your own websites, your newsletters, your social media accounts, try to leverage visuals as best as possible to tell your story. And my last trend that I want to go through here, and this is the one that our clients cringe about, is unfortunately we don't have control anymore. Everyone has a voice. If you literally have access to a computer and the internet, you can communicate your opinion about something. So to put that into perspective from my experience over the past year or two, if I contact a company and I email them or call them and I don't get a response back that day, I instantly go to social media and I communicate my concern. And more often than not nowadays, these companies are responding. Now, some companies are not doing the greatest job with that. So I want to just share with you a very recent case study that happened with British Airways. So here was a gentleman. He had a poor experience with British Airways. He called them, he emailed them, didn't get a response. He did what a lot of social media people do, went on to Twitter and communicated his concern. Now, unfortunately, this guy only had about 100 people that were following him. So it kind of just fell on deaf ears. British Airways team probably saw it and said, you know what, this is a no one. Who cares? Let's ignore it. He got frustrated. No one was helping him. So what he did, which I thought was pretty genius, Twitter announced recently a new promoted post feature where you actually can advertise your tweet, your post, to a certain audience. So what he did was he spent $1,000 of his own money. He promoted his post, but not just promoted it, he promoted it to 302,000 of British Airways fans. So you can imagine now British Airways then saw it the next day. Now here's where they did a bad job. Their response, rather than, and we'll walk that through in a second here about how to properly respond and follow a process, that was the wrong response. So yes, good that they responded, but they responded, sorry, we don't check Twitter feed at that point in time. Our point to you all here is that social media, it is a 24-hour job. And I'm going to share with you here some tools in a second on how to make that a little easier for you. So here's a process we recommend that you all leverage. First and foremost, definitely listen. That's the first thing you want to do. About social media, just before you start jumping in and building out your whole entire campaigns, start playing with it, get comfortable with it, listen to your audience. Then start engaging. Let them know that you have heard their concern, if it's a negative thing or even a positive thing. Then start acting, going back to them and addressing the problem. And then lastly is responding. There's nothing worse in social media than if you ask me a question, I respond to you, and then you don't close the loop. You've got to make it about a relationship. That's all social media is about. It's an online way to network and develop relationships. So with that, I just want to wrap it up here with 3 quick tools that are our favorites to help you with this, because again, we're not trying to say you should be awake 24 hours trying to leverage social media. We will also talk about this a lot more this afternoon. But these are 3 tools, and you can't beat the price. There's no cost to them. My personal favorite is Google Alerts. If you aren't leveraging this today, I strongly encourage you to. What we do with Google Alerts is we'll put in our company name, our team members' names, industry terms, as well as our competitors. So you can use this tool to really help you understand what's going on in your space, and proactively Google will just tell you, hey, here's what's going on with one of your competitors. The top right one is another tool called Hootsuite. You can use this tool to schedule, to monitor, and to also analyze what's going on with platforms like Twitter and other social media. Again, because we're not asking you to stay up 24 hours a day, you can actually use tools like Hootsuite to actually schedule out your posts. And then lastly is social mention. This is a social mention. This is a social version of Google Alerts. So you can go on there, you can put on your keywords, and then it'll communicate to you what's going on. So to wrap this all up before I ask Robin and Jenny to come up on the stage and discuss branding and design along with Eric, is 4, again, trends. 1 is getting found, focusing on your content and your audience. And then from there, you optimize that for the search engines, not the other way around. That's the old way of doing it. Focus on your users. The second one is avoiding shiny objects, is making sure technology makes sense for your audience. The third is leveraging visual content. In every case possible, try to look at how can I incorporate an image into this content to help complement the story. And then last but not least, your online reputation is really, really important. You've got to monitor it. Everyone's got a voice. If that one person communicates a positive or a negative or a concern, that person might have a big following. We definitely encourage you to make sure you engage with every single person. So again, this afternoon, please, I encourage you to come into our session. Any questions you have, Alex and myself are available the rest of the member seminar through Saturday morning. We are here to help you and answer any questions you have. Thank you.